People in our own backyards are hurting. There are insecurities around food, economics, mental health, access to justice, healthcare, and our society continues to become more divisive. But there is hope. Right here in Chicagoland, there are people and organizations who are on the front lines, working to bring about positive and transformative change. Each week, we're going to meet some of these agents of change and examine how they are spurring innovative ideas and finding solutions to push our society forward in a more just direction. I'm Sufyan Sohel, and this is Change Agents. Almost 40 million people live in poverty in the United States. People working at minimum wage, even holding down multiple jobs. Seniors living on fixed incomes, wage earners suddenly out of work. Millions of families everywhere, from our cities to rural communities. Poverty does not strike all demographics equally, with Black, Brown, and Native American communities facing economic uncertainties at the highest levels. For those living in poverty, the skills required to find employment can seem so overwhelming, their job search never begins, and the cycle of poverty never ends. For those without a permanent home, they face additional barriers in securing steady employment due to not having a permanent address, limited contact information or transportation, limited access to showers and clean clothing, gaps in their employment history, and some may have criminal histories or be dealing with mental health or substance abuse issues. Many face heightened discrimination due to systemic racism and bias due to their economic status. Despite these setbacks, they create an incredible and untapped talent pool for our country. There are organizations in our own backyard who are working to unlock their strengths and showcase them to the world. One of those organizations is the CARA Collective, and I'm so pleased to have with me tonight Chief Philanthropy Officer Tara Harper and Chief Program Officer Kim Massenberg. Thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. So I shared some information about this problem that we have, right? There's this endless cycle of poverty with getting jobs, and it's kind of like a chicken and egg syndrome that we see, that one prohibits the other, and it's ongoing and ongoing. Can you please both just share what you're seeing on the ground when it comes to people struggling to get out of economic uncertainty and find jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of the data and a lot of the statistics that you were sharing at the top is really what we're experiencing here in Chicago, right? We understand that in many ways, Chicago is a tale of two cities and really has been for a really long time. We remain one of the most segregated cities in the country, right? With unbelievable pockets of poverty, unbelievable pockets of high crime, unbelievable pockets of low education attainment, right? And so all of these barriers and challenges that are condensed in these in smaller neighborhoods, right, are really struggling to bridge that gap to meaningful employment opportunities. And so when you look at the problem kind of from a big level, right, you look at the unemployment rates for Chicago, and one might say, wow, they've hit less than 5%. According to the rest of the country, we're not faring that bad, right? But the reality is that in certain neighborhoods, those unemployment rates are over 30%, right? In Englewood alone, you have nearly 34% of the population in that one community without a job. And so when you're looking at all of those challenges, it's how do they start to overcome that?
Sure. What other neighborhoods are hit hard?
Yeah, North Lawndale, Austin, Humboldt Park, right? These are just some of the communities that we are, CARA Collective is really providing support, and a lot of our job seekers come from these neighborhoods, and should be of no surprise that they also have the highest crime records, right, of the entire city, many of those same communities. And so they're facing so many incredible challenges, from the simple as background, from simple as the school system, from as simple as lack of transportation to where a lot of these jobs actually live, right? Downtown. You have to be able to get to and from downtown. And so it's all of these complicated issues that all collide at the same time.
Tara, thanks so much for sharing that. As a follow-up, a lot of people push back and say, they're homeless or they're poor, why don't they just go out and get jobs?
Yeah.
So what are some of those barriers that you're seeing that prevent people from going to get jobs?
Yeah.
I think the barriers that are presented for us at CARA and really throughout the entire Chicagoland area when you're dealing with Black and brown communities is accessibility, to be completely honest. Resources are not readily accessible to that population, and we don't have the ability to just go here and go there and be able to get the needs that we need to have addressed. So that's one of the things. And we look at it, digital divide. That's another thing where, again, our populations don't have the, the fortitude as well to say, hey, we need this. How do we be able to answer that particular issue for us? So it's accessibility to resources. It's resources, our participants being able to actually get to these resources. So not only are social services not in Inglewood and all of these communities, but even though they might be in another community, how are our participants, how are our people getting to these communities where we can access, the food banks, the other resources, the mental health, things of that nature. So we have a conundrum of a lot of issues that kind of fold in on one another, and it makes our participants harder to get jobs and harder to address these issues.
What would you say, and thank you for sharing that, some of the myths that surround these individuals, from those who may have access or who don't have difficulty finding jobs? What are the myths or the biases that you feel are put upon these communities?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because your earlier question about, people might say, well, why don't they just go get a job, right? I think that there's a lot of biases that say, well, there's a whole market out there. There's all sorts of things out there, but I think that we sometimes don't take the time to think about, what is happening earlier in that person's life and in that person's family's life, right? What type of school resources were available to them, education level that was available to them, right? So all of these things, I think people sometimes forget these challenges, and it's not just so as simple as like just go and get a job, right? Do they have access to childcare? Sometimes individuals are looking at jobs the second shift or third shift, right? And there's not really all the time childcare that is easily, reliably, and safely available to families. And so I think that there's, like Kim said, there's a lot of different issues that are colliding there.
Could you be able to and willing to share some of the stories of people who may be coming to you?
So we have I guess in general, the population that we serve are individuals that are just as involved, are individuals that have come from broken families, those types of individuals that have really mental health, substance abuse involved. So again, they're coming to us with a myriad of issues. And again, our population, they get low wage jobs. I think as Tara said, one of the myths is that we don't have the right education attainment, right? So how do we put that upskilling, why do we put education in front of these individuals so that at the end of the day, they can go out and get themselves a job like everyone else can? So it's really about that. These individuals are just like you and I, but they haven't been given the opportunity to then show their skills because of one thing or the other. Again, it's the neighborhoods that they're living in, they don't have the ability to say, oh, I'm gonna go up the street and go to this employment, program like CARA to then get what they need. So it's a lot of kind of issues folding in on each other that enables our participants of getting the right types of jobs.
Yeah, wonderful.
And I could share a story.
Please.
If I can. We have I'll say a young woman who was in our program a number of years ago. And I think similar to many of the profiles of folks who come to us, she had just been through a recovery program. She had spent most of her youth in the foster care system, bouncing around from home to home to home, because her own mom was, was dealing with the symptoms of poverty, right, and was not able to care for her the way that she needed to be cared for. And so she found turning to drugs, right, into substances substance as a place to fill a lot of that void and to, and so then she found, after the recovery program, she found her way back to Cara Collective, right? Where she really had an opportunity to find a sense of family, to find a sense of community, and to find a passion for herself. And after about 2 years in our program, she now just bought her first home, literally like not that long ago, a few months ago. And her son is a straight A student in high school and is thinking about where he's gonna go to college. And she talks a lot about, right, like, had it not been for Cara and had it not been for that opportunity that presented itself to develop, not just get a job, but to get a career, right? To actually build something that would help them have some economic mobility. Her life, her trajectory, her entire family's trajectory has changed because of that.
That's so wonderful to hear, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. Let's talk about Cara. So tell me more about the programs, the services that you offer.
Yeah. So what I'll start with Cara Collective is that we say we're not an organization that is just about finding people a job, right? We really believe that our mission and our goal is to eradicate poverty. And we say both financial and relational poverty. And what that means is we want to help people, again, break that generational cycle of poverty for themselves, for their family, for their children, and for the generations that come from there, right? And so our goal is not a quick win. We're not looking for a quick win. We are really focused on how do we provide a more holistic approach to programming so that we are addressing those issues. All of those barriers, whether it's lack of childcare, whether it's unstable housing, whether it's food insecurity, all of those things don't go away just because they showed up at our door, right? And so we really believe that we need to address all of these things at the same time that we're building those hard skills, those skills so that when they go on their very first interview, they are going to be successful. And so that is really the approach that we take at Cara Collective.
That's so great. Let's talk about some of those hard skills.
Yeah.
So our program design is really based on the 3-week program design. So when the individual come in, again, as Tara alluded to, we're not just trying to get someone a short-term job, right? A short-term job is not a fixed boss. We're looking for long and lasting success. Our 3-week program is really about building relationships and building that social and emotional type of learning that you have to get. So a lot of times when people go into jobs, they are, one thing or another is preventing them from either obtaining that job, getting a promotion, sustaining that job for a year. So in our program, we really, really hone in on all of those social emotional skills that's going to prevent you from staying on that job. And so in the first 3 weeks, we hone in on, we have a love exercise, for example. We have some of those softer skills, so social and emotional things that we have to get through, but we also have those hard skills. So we're teaching individuals competencies, work competencies, time management, things of that nature. And then we're also, in the future, we're making sure that individuals that come to us are leaving with something tangible. So as Tara's alluding to, a job, but it's not just a job, it's a career path, right? So we don't want to just land someone in, a random job. We want to make sure that whatever job that they get from us through our partners, because again, we can't do this work alone, is going to be sustainable for not only themselves, but for their families and their futures as well.
That's great. I have so many more questions.
Let's
and
do
I wish
it.
we could be here all night talking
Let's
about
do
this.
it.
But I want to pivot a little bit about, we talked earlier about some of the social enterprises that you all have launched. So a segue into starting that career path for some of these individuals. Can you talk more maybe about your Clean Slate program and some of the other programs that you have?
I'll start it off and then I'll hand it over to Tara. So within our 3-week program design, Clean Slate is just one of our social enterprises that allow our individuals to not only fill the gap of employment, but also to create a transitional job for our participants. So within that 3-week program design, an individual at week 2 can start gaining money for themselves.
And experience.
And experience. Our entire program design is about experiential learning.
Sure.
So again, you don't know what you don't know until you get to our program. And through this experience, you're really learning how to hone in on those particular skills, interviewing skills, soft skills, hard skills, going over to Clean Slate, understanding what a route is, understanding how to work together with other individuals, collaborate, things of that nature that, again, people expect you to come into a job with, but sometimes these skills need to be taught, right? So Clean Slate is one of our enterprises that we allow individuals to work. while still in our program, while still working on themselves, while still making sure that services are wrapped around them so that any barrier that they are hit against, we are answering that barrier. We're answering that call for our participants so they don't have to necessarily worry about that.
That's so great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about your other social enterprises?
Yeah, so what I'll add to what Kim said is that part of why our name Collective, right, is a reflection of the 4 entities that make up the organization. And so at the core being the programs working with our participants and working with our job seekers. But we have 2 social enterprise. One is Clean Slate, which is a streets beautification, right, a neighborhood beautification service. You might see the Clean Slate trucks running around the city, and really they're doing everything from snow removal to graffiti removal. And it really does, again, provide that opportunity for folks who have some of the greatest barriers to employment, like a criminal record, or like maybe this might be their first job, right, to provide that transitional work. The uniqueness about it for a nonprofit is that it also then provides revenue back to supporting the organization, so that as we're thinking about the programs, the services, the wraparounds that our participants need, we actually have the resources to do so while also creating job opportunities at the same time. The second social enterprise is our mission-focused, it's called Cara Connects, and it's our mission-focused staffing firm. So again, we have job participants that come in, they go through the programming, and they might be ready right away for temporary jobs, with the goal that those temporary jobs become permanent placement as well. And so we're creating almost up to 400 jobs just through those 2 arms, where our participants get to go, get that real life experience, get some exposure, practice some of those skills that they're learning, and then if they're not fully placed there, that they then get to be fully placed in one of our larger partnerships with some of the biggest companies here in Chicago. So it's really exciting. And then I'll just quickly add the 4th element, right? So we've got kind of our core, we've got 2 social enterprise, and then we have what we call Cara Plus, and that is really our expansion. What we know over 30 years of doing this work is that it's not just the work that we're doing with the job seekers and the participants that come to us, but it's also our employment partners. And so we have relationships with BMO Harris Bank, Aon, Deloitte, University of Chicago Medicine, this just to name a few. Part of the work that we do in Plus is to say, how do we ensure that we're really looking at a more inclusive hiring practice, right? Sure. Like you mentioned at the top, it's an untapped population, but there might be a lot of policies, a lot of biases, a lot of challenges that a lot of these companies and these organizations, some misconceptions around these groups as to why they can't hire them. So we are looking at second chance hiring programs, right? We're really helping people understand what does it take to bring in this more diverse population, and then more importantly, what does it take to keep them and support them?
Thanks again to my guests. I learned so much about the struggles faced by some of our neighbors, and I'm so proud that organizations like the Cara Collective is working hard in our community. Up next, someone who reached out to Cara Collective and found a brand new beginning. We'll be right back. My next guest tonight came to Cara in April of 2007, following 5 years of battling addiction and homelessness. Today, she's a licensed clinical social worker and a reverend with the City of Praise Church. Currently, she's the interim executive director for Chicago Survivors, an organization that provides support services to surviving family members of Chicago homicide victims. I'm thrilled to introduce you all to Sufyan Sohel. Sufyan, thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be here.
Of course. So you heard our first segment where we had the wonderful ladies from Cara Collective here, and you have many years of experience with them.
I do, and it's just such a privilege to know that that's where my path began. You know, I even say honor because I know I was very fortunate to be able to have an opportunity to go through the phases of Cara. Because of my history and those who I know who've taken the path that I've taken, they didn't always come out or get introduced to such a great program that is transformational.
Sure, and I appreciate you sharing that. So let's talk a little bit about where you were before you met Cara.
Yeah, it was a very dark place, you know. I was about 25, 26 years old, really trying to determine if life had meaning in a way that I believed I could make something out of it. And I just remember feeling as if I should give myself a chance somehow. And in response to that, I went to a shelter for women. And a part of their programming, Kira, was the next phase once you detox and once you had clear thinking. And I was introduced right away. And the first day was motivations. It's early in the morning. And these people were like electric. I was like, what is going on? Why are you so happy? Anybody drinking like Starbucks? What's going on? So, I just remember like there was life there, right? And that was something that I really wanted for myself. And perhaps this would be the place to get it.
So what did you find besides these early morning motivations?
People, right? I found opportunity. I found people who believed in you, who could see the good in you. And, many of the phrases that stick with me to this very day are, you're worthy of the best life has to offer. Look at the world with new eyes. And I was able to begin to do that there. They had process and programs that backed that up, not just like a cliche, right? It was something there to provide that transformation to see the world.
So besides for this path of transformation, of learning and energizing, what was that next step then in finding employment and getting on your own feet?
Yeah, and it was an empowering space because I have some history with collegiate education, right? So I went to school. It's where a lot of my addiction and things like that kicked in. And they had a social enterprise. It was fairly new, clean slate. And I wanted to be more self-supporting. If I could be honest, some parts of me was a spoiled brat, and I wanted to be on my own for once, take care of myself, and it didn't matter if I was going to be cleaning streets, right? And for me, that was like a byproduct of doing that transformation phases, because I was able to take honor and pride in whatever I did. And so sweeping those streets, one of our instructors would say, like, you're getting $1 million. I'm like, who sweeps streets like $1 million? But listen, I want to get to the next version of me, so I'm going to embrace that. And I did that, and I was, through that program, shining bright like a diamond. And 3 months later, they had connected me with my first interview with the legal aid, which I stayed for 8 years. Wow. It's like my first adult job. And Kara supported me through that whole bit because I found my purpose sitting at that front desk at that legal aid organization. And I wanted to go back to school to be a social worker. I knew the end. I was like, I'm supposed to help people like they help me. And I think this is the way to do it.
When did you know you wanted to be a social worker?
When folks would tell me their stories and they would be so defeated, they would say, like, how could I ever get over this, right? Because legal aid dealt with criminal record relief where I was. And I had a criminal record myself in a state that didn't have relief, like the state of Illinois. And I often found myself, encouraging them, giving them empowerment. And I remember my boss there would say, Jashawn, you're doing a session, you're supposed to be the receptionist, but keep doing what you're doing because the people are coming back for all the programming. And I would go to Kara, back to motivations, even after I had that job, because it was a lifeline. It was a lifeline.
So you kept going back to
I
that
kept
support
going back.
And that
and
family
community.
And community, okay.
It was community. They were a part of my healing. They were a part of my purpose now, right? And anything, because I appreciated that. That was like in my roots. For first, I was doing something that meant something that was bigger than me.
Well, it seems to have a profound impact on your life. And I've loved reading everything that you're doing and all that you've done. And I even went and saw the video they made of you, which is just such a testament to their work and to you. And thank you for bringing your whole self. If you could tell viewers and me the importance of organizations like Kara in your life, how would you sum that up?
This is an organization that believes in people who are almost censored as the hopeless versions of transformation or goodness or any accomplishment. This organization shines on those people, and they help them to find the deepest truths of who they are. And so if you ever think and you look in the world and you're like, wow, underneath all of that, that darkness or that dirt or that marry place, is there any goodness? Kara is the place that will say absolutely, and I'm going to show you how.
And I mean, it's just so evident.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing your whole self to us tonight. Thank you for sharing your story. Deshawn, we're so grateful you joined us. We'll be right back with this week's Change in Action. Tonight, we've been blessed with the opportunity to speak with a nonprofit working tirelessly to help Chicago's most vulnerable residents, help them gain economic security through employment and job training. For this week's Change in Action, we'll meet a nonprofit organization focused on offering job training, social enterprise, and education services to Chicagoans who also have to overcome the barrier of being visually impaired in a sight-centered world. Please say hello to our friends at the Chicago Lighthouse.
My name is Aisha Yarrow, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I chose the Lighthouse to intern. So for my program, we have to do an internship in order to graduate. So when I was doing my research, I came across the Chicago Lighthouse. The Chicago Lighthouse is one of the oldest social service agencies in Illinois. We serve people who are visually impaired, blind, and veterans. For me, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go into employment services. We work on basically finding employment. One of the activities that we do with the clients is computer skills. For example, if they were ever to look for a job that was computer-based, they would have those skills ready for them. The Chicago Lighthouse serves 50,000 people each year, and the services that offer here are at no cost. We don't turn anyone down. When the internship is over, of course I'm gonna be sad because I'm one of those people, like, once I'm in an environment every day with the same people, like, you build the bond, you build that friendship with them. So when it is time to leave, I will tell everyone that it is a great experience, that I think everyone should consider the Lighthouse, not just because of the activities, but like the atmosphere here. Like, everyone here is, very welcoming, very nice. And I guess the only thing I would just tell them is just look into it.
Thank you, Chicago Lighthouse. You truly are making the world and Chicago a better place. Throughout this season, we have discussed the impact of economic security on the lives of our neighbors, our friends, and members of our communities. People are struggling and often find themselves in a never-ending systemic cycle of despair. We learned today that when you don't have a job, it's easy to quickly become homeless. A missed paycheck or two is often the first step towards eviction and homelessness. And when you don't have an address to put on a job application or access to clean clothes for an interview, it can be hard to find a job to get back on your feet. I am so grateful for organizations like Kara Collective, who work so tirelessly to empower some of our most vulnerable. Please check out their website for ways to engage and support their extraordinary work. President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little." Like our guests tonight, we each have the power to make our world better. We can all be change agents. Let us all be change agents. Until next time, my friends, I'll see you next week.